I returned to the manor seeking help after encountering bandits outside. Husband, hurry and save them. Mother has been captured by mountain bandits. Outside the study, Wei Mingyan's subordinates blocked my path. The Marquis is in council, no one is to disturb him. No matter how loudly I shouted in the courtyard, my subordinates remained unmoved. It wasn't until Wei Mingyang finished his discussion and pushed the door open, only to run straight into my mother, who had rushed over upon hearing the news. His expression froze. What's going on? Didn't you say my mother-in-law was kidnapped by bandits? I picked up a handkerchief to wipe my teary eyes, sobbing. It's all my fault for being too hasty and not explaining clearly. The one captured by the mountain bandits wasn't my mother, but your mother, husband, madam. The offerings for tomorrow's incense ceremony are all prepared. The maid's voice sounded beside my ear, in my dazed state. The scene of being force-fed poisoned wine still seemed vividly before my eyes. When I came to my senses, I saw my reflection in the bronze mirror, my face a full decade younger. At last I confirmed, I, Zhao Tinglan, have been reborn. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. In my previous life, after mother passed away, I spent my days drowning in tears, to distract me from my grief. My husband Wei Mingyang brought home a pair of siblings, claiming they were orphaned distant relatives. He asked me to raise them by my side. The siblings were obedient and well-behaved, bringing me much comfort indeed. I registered them under my name and devoted myself to their upbringing for 10 years. Yet not long after the new emperor ascended the throne, Wei Mingyang brought a woman before me. My adopted children stood by their side. Calling them father and mother with such affectionate familiarity, I asked Wei Mingyang what this meant. Before he could speak, his adopted daughter Wei Shu rolled her eyes at me. Zhao She, you really are foolish. Brother and I were never some distant relative's children. We are father's own flesh and blood, and the woman before you is our birth mother. I widened my eyes in disbelief, listening to them freely humiliate my foolish incompetence. So Wei Mingyang had been keeping a mistress all these years, even bringing her children back to the Marquis's estate to deceive me into raising them. Even my mother's accident back then was Wei Mingyang's doing. My eyes nearly burst from rage as I lunged at Wei Mingyang, only to be kicked down by him. With his arms around his mistress, he looked down at me contemptuously. Zhao Tinglan, now that the new emperor has ascended the throne and rehabilitated the Meng family, Wana no longer needs to hide in obscurity. All of your Zhao family's assets have been transferred to Shua's name. Now that your usefulness as a pawn has ended, it's time for you to retire gracefully. Considering our years as husband and wife, I've procured for you a lethal poison that kills upon contact with blood, sparing you from further suffering. By his side, his mistress Meng Wn chuckled sweetly. Sister Zhao, I truly must thank you, all these years. It's been your efforts that raised my children so well. It was through your Zhao family connections that Yuna could secure marriage with the Prime Minister's household. It's all thanks to you frequently taking Shua around those shops that she could gain the recognition of the Zhao family's managers so quickly. Meng Wan pretended to push the Wei siblings in front of me, urging them to call me mother once more. She claimed it was to repay my years of nurturing them, yet those siblings, whom I had raised with such care, showed nothing but contempt. The Wei Shu who used to cling to me coquettishly now looked at me with utter disgust. What kind of thing is the Zhao woman? Is she worthy of me calling her mother? And Wei Yun, that adopted son for whom I hired renowned tutors to pave his path to success, was the very one who personally poured that cup of poisoned wine down my throat. The last scene before I was consumed by pain was the smug, hideous faces of a family of 4. My lady, the maid's voice snapped me out of my memories. Looking at the pile of sacrificial offerings for incense burning in her hands, waves of hatred surged in my eyes. In my past life, my mother met with disaster while accompanying me back from temple incense offerings. This time, I absolutely won't let any harm come to mother. I motioned my maid closer and whispered several instructions in her ear. She withdrew after receiving her orders. Since Wei Mingyang has gone to such lengths with his schemes, I can't let his plans come to nothing. Every ounce of suffering this scoundrel inflicted on me in my past life, I'll make him pay for it all. The next day, I arrived at the temple early. Kneeling before the Buddha, I prayed with utmost devotion. May Buddha grant me vengeance, making the wicked pay in blood. On the way back to the city, bandits emerged just as in my past life, brandishing knives to rob travelers. I fled all the way back to the Marquis's residence, weeping and wailing outside the study. Wei Mingyan's subordinates stopped me expressionlessly. No one is to disturb the Marquis during his council. I pounded on the door and shouted, but there was no response from within. Only when my cries grew hoarse did Wei Mingyang finally push the door open and emerge. The cloying scent of rouge and powder clinging to him assaulted my nostrils. In my past life, I was too worried to notice this point. He wasn't discussing official matters in his study at all, he'd clearly gone to frolic with his mistress. But if Wei Mingyang knew what consequences his actions today would bring, I wonder if he'd regret his deliberate delays. Wei Mingyang pretended to be concerned and asked me what had happened. I clutched his sleeve, sobbing uncontrollably. "Husband, go save them quickly. Mother has been kidnapped by mountain bandits." A glint of triumph flashed in Wei Mingyan's eyes, yet he said, "Don't panic. My lady, I'll take men to rescue your mother at once." His words had barely faded when hurried footsteps approached. The moment he saw the newcomer, Wei Mingyan's expression froze. Pointing at my mother who had run to my side, he asked in shock, "Didn't you say my mother-in-law was kidnapped by bandits?" I leaned against my mother's chest, sniffling as I wiped away tears. It's my fault for being too hasty and not explaining clearly. The one kidnapped by the mountain bandits wasn't my mother. "But your mother, husband." Wei Mingyan's face turned pale with shock, and he immediately left with his men. He was in such a hurry because he knew exactly what those people would do after capturing his mother. After all, he had personally told me in his previous life. The instructions he left for those mountain bandits were simple: just keep her barely alive. Barely alive. It's easy to imagine what those people would do to Mother. So after he hypocritically rescued Mother and brought her back, seeing Mother tortured almost beyond human recognition shattered my heart. Wei Mingyang doesn't deserve to die even 10,000 times over. I stared at Wei Mingyan's retreating figure, waves of hatred surging in my eyes. Mother grabbed my hand and asked nervously, "Lana, what exactly happened? Yesterday you specifically sent word telling me not to accompany you to the temple, and today you encountered bandits on the mountain. Could this be?" I wiped away my tears and led Mother back to the inner courtyard. After dismissing the servants, I recounted the events of my rebirth in detail. Mother listened, utterly disbelieving. How could this be possible? It wasn't that she found the idea of rebirth absurd, but rather that she couldn't believe Wei Mingyang could be that kind of person. Yes, how could it be possible? Had I not witnessed it with my own eyes and heard it with my own ears in my past life? I wouldn't have believed Wei Mingyang could commit such heinous acts. He was simply too good at pretending, until the very end when he wanted to send me to my grave. Did he finally reveal his true colors? My Zhao family came from merchant origins. When discussing marriage, my parents originally had no intention of climbing the social ladder by attaching ourselves to an official family, yet Ningyuan Marquis Wei Mingyang came in person to propose marriage to me. Not only did he promise that I would manage the household affairs after entering his family, but he also swore before my parents that he would never take a concubine. Seeing his sincerity and remembering how the old Marquis was a hero of Wei state, my parents relented and agreed to let me meet him first. Wei Mingyang was naturally blessed with striking good looks. During our time together, he was always impeccably proper, gentle yet measured in his conduct. I was completely won over and willingly married into the Marquis household. For 5 years of marriage, he has always treated me with tenderness. Whenever conflicts arose with my mother-in-law or sister-in-law, he consistently stood by my side, yet I felt deeply guilty toward him for failing to conceive. Though I suggested several times that he take a concubine, he firmly refused each occasion. Wei Mingyang said, "Heirs aren't important, having you by my side is enough." Hearing him say this only deepened my guilt. The reason I was preparing to visit the temple with Mother was because I'd heard the one outside the city was particularly efficacious for praying for children. Little did I know that Wei Mingyan's solemn vow never to take a concubine was because he already had a tender beauty warming his bed elsewhere. His indifference towards having heirs stemmed from the fact that someone had already borne him children. My years of childlessness were due to him secretly dosing my food with sterilizing drugs. Also, I dutifully managed the marquisate for him while clearing the path for those two bastards to eventually enter the household. Mother left the Marquis residence with a heavy heart, seeing how I gritted my teeth in hatred. She knew I wasn't spinning tales. She said she would investigate Meng Wan's background for me, in my past life. I heard Wei Mingyang say the new emperor had rehabilitated the Meng family, that mistress-born Meng Wan's identity was likely anything but simple. Not long after Mother left, Wei Mingyang returned with a dark expression. I squeezed out a few tears and rushed forward. "Husband, why didn't you bring Mother back?" "My lady," Wei Mingyan's voice sounded as if it were forced through clenched teeth. "Wasn't your mother-in-law supposed to accompany you to the temple today? How did it become my mother?" Originally, mother was going with me, but she suddenly fell ill yesterday. This morning I left the city alone. As for mother-in-law, I pretended to wipe the corners of my eyes with a handkerchief, concealing the coldness in my gaze. My dear mother-in-law, Madame Yu, has always been looking for faults in me. I deliberately had someone spread rumors in front of her, saying I wasn't going out of town to burn incense but to secretly meet another man, Yu Shi, eager to catch me in the act. Immediately followed me out of the city. She searched left and right in the temple but found no trace of any lover. All she could see was me kneeling devoutly before the Buddha in prayer. On the way back to the city, the carriage she was originally riding in encountered trouble, forcing her to share mine. To ensure the plan's execution, Wei Mingyang naturally didn't disclose his arrangements to Madame Yu, since the bandits had only received orders to capture the woman traveling with me. Madame Yu inevitably fell victim. As for me, the reason I could effortlessly return to the city for help was because they had been instructed to deliberately let me go. Madam, those mountain bandits threatened my mother's life. I dared not act recklessly. They demanded 100,000 taels of silver before they'd release her. Wei Mingyan's voice carried a note of embarrassment, as the lady managing household affairs. You must know the Marquisite's coffers are strained. We truly cannot raise such a sum. Could you, perhaps borrow some from the Zhao family first? I sneered inwardly. In my past life, when he went to rescue mother and returned midway, he used the same excuse. Back then, it was my mother who had been kidnapped. Without him needing to say much, I urgently gathered the silver from the Zhao family's shops. He deliberately had his men let me go, just so someone could return to raise the money. He laid hands on his own mother just for the Zhao family's silver. Though his plan went awry, he still hasn't forgotten his designs on that money. Seeing I didn't respond immediately, he added, rest assured, Madam, consider this a loan from the Zhao family. I'll repay it without fail. I interrupted him. What kind of talk is this, husband? How could I not help when mother-in-law is in trouble? Seeing him heave a sigh of relief, I added, but, just now when you went to rescue her, didn't you encounter Commander Jiyu? Commander Jiyu? Wei Mingyang froze momentarily. Yes, it's Commander Jiyu from the Imperial Police. I nodded. I was worried you might be short-handed, husband, so I reported it to the garrison command. Coincidentally, Commander Jiyu happened to be there discussing official matters. He said those mountain bandits might be connected to a case he's investigating, so he immediately took his men there. How come you didn't run into them? Wei Mingyan's face instantly turned pale. Jiyu Tsong of the Imperial Police Bureau was known as the living king of hell. He was utterly impartial and employed ruthless interrogation methods. No prisoner who fell into his hands ever failed to confess the truth. Wei Mingyang knew full well that if the mountain bandits were captured, his entire scheme would inevitably be exposed. At this point, he couldn't care less about demanding 100,000 taels. Turning around to rush outside, watching his panicked retreating figure, I curled my lips into a frosty smile. This was only the beginning. When my mother-in-law Lady Yu was carried back to the Marquis residence, her hair was disheveled and her clothes torn to shreds. Her bare arms and neck were covered in bruises. Anyone with eyes could guess what she'd been through. I stood watching beneath the eaves, feeling not an ounce of pity, only grim satisfaction. In my past life, when mother suffered misfortune, Madame Yu came to visit, and that very night after her departure, mother hanged herself. Later, one of Madame Yu's servants let slip the truth. It turned out that when she came to our house that day, while I was away, Madame Yu made sarcastic remarks in front of my mother. She said if something like that had happened to her, how could she still have the face to live? She should have found a rope and ended it long ago. My mother was already tormented to the point of mental collapse, and naturally couldn't bear such humiliation. Now that Madame Yu herself had become the victim, how could someone as life-loving and death-fearing as her truly hang herself with a rope as she claimed? But it didn't matter, someone would always lend her a helping hand. My gaze shifted and landed on Wei Minglan, my sister-in-law who had rushed over upon hearing the news. Wei Minglan threw herself by the bedside. Weeping uncontrollably at the sight of Madame Yu's condition, I deliberately kept the maid talking with me under the corridor, speaking just loud enough for her to hear. The old mistress has suffered so much. From now on, you must all be careful with your words around her. Don't bring up those rumors from outside. In the end, it's already fortunate enough that she returned alive. What's reputation compared to life? As soon as I finished speaking, the sound of weeping from inside the room grew noticeably quieter. I knew Wei Minglan had taken it to heart. The next day, Wei Minglan went out to keep her appointment, but before long, she returned with a face as pale as death. The people I sent reported back that the young ladies who invited her to the tea house were all probing about the Yu family's encounter with bandits. Some went straight for her sore spot, with your mother involved in such a scandal. Do you really think you can still marry the fourth prince? The fourth prince was currently the hottest figure in court. Wei Minglan harbored ambitions as high as the heavens, determined to marry into royalty. The young ladies who usually interacted with her were all aware of her ambitions. Naturally, some among them harbored competitive intentions toward her, and now that such misfortune had befallen the Marquis's household, they couldn't help but gloat. These words undoubtedly struck Wei Minglan's Achilles' heel. For Wei Minglan, nothing mattered more than marrying the fourth prince. Even her own mother couldn't stand in her way. I had people keep a close watch on her, and sure enough, someone came to report late at night. Miss Minglan took a white silk cord and entered the old madam's chamber. I was waiting for news when Wei Mingyang unexpectedly returned. He caught Wei Minglan trying to strangle Lady Yu and immediately slapped her across the face. Wei Minglan clutched her cheek and shrieked, "Her reputation is already ruined. If she truly cared for us, she should end her own life. At least she'd leave behind a chaste and noble name. Now her clinging to life only brings me scornful glances everywhere. How could the fourth prince possibly marry me now?" Wei Mingyang was shaken by Wei Minglan's roar, but ultimately still didn't lay a hand on Madame Yu. He said to Wei Minglan, "If mother were to pass away now, wouldn't you have to observe mourning? As for the fourth prince, I'll think of a way for you." He summoned the house physician, but after taking Madame Yu's pulse, the doctor shook his head. The old mistress held her breath for too long, though she kept a breath of life. She's become a living corpse. Hearing the news, I didn't feel particularly disappointed. Keeping that last breath is perfect. It'll let her watch with her own eyes as I turn the Ningyuan Marquis's residence upside down. In my past life, after that pair of siblings entered the household, Lady Yu doted on them endlessly. I don't understand how someone as narrow-minded as her could be so affectionate toward other people's children. Only in this lifetime did I realize she'd known all along about Wei Mingyang keeping a mistress. While basking in the joy of having grandchildren around her daily, she used my childlessness as an excuse to torment me endlessly. Not a single decent person exists in this entire Ningyuan Marquis household. Thinking of Wei Mingyan's words about his sister, my eyes darkened. The fourth prince, in her past life, Wei Minglan did indeed marry the fourth prince and became his concubine. After the new emperor ascended the throne, the Wei family's daughter became an imperial consort. Enjoying boundless glory for a time, although Wei Mingyang held the title of Marquis, the Ningyuan Marquisate was no longer as prosperous as it had been during the old Marquis's time. How could the fourth prince possibly take a liking to Wei Minglan, whose maternal family wasn't particularly influential? Suddenly, I remembered those 100,000 tales. Though the current emperor had long since established an heir, it was an open secret that the crown prince, born to the late empress, had been frail since childhood and wasn't destined for longevity. Thus, the fourth prince, born of the noble consort, already had his own faction in the court. However, the fourth prince's path to power was not without obstacles. Since Wei Mingyang intended to use my Zhao family's 100,000 taels as his pledge of allegiance to the fourth prince, then I wouldn't mind stirring the waters of this power struggle even more. Half a month later, it was the birthday banquet of the Dowager Lady of the Duke's mansion. During this period, due to the excessive rumors circulating outside, Wei Minglan had been hiding in the mansion for quite some time, but today, she finally dressed herself meticulously and accompanied me to the banquet. The reason was none other than her long-awaited fourth prince, who would also be attending to offer his congratulations. In my previous life, I didn't attend due to my mother's affairs. But I still heard about the scandal that occurred at the birthday banquet. The daughter of the Minister of Revenue was discovered in intimate relations with the heir of Marquis Zhaoda. That minister's daughter was the one who harbored competitive intentions against Wei Minglan. After witnessing such an unsightly scene firsthand, the fourth prince naturally couldn't possibly bring the minister's daughter into his household. Wei Minglan has indeed lost a formidable competitor, however. This time I can't guarantee whether Wei Minglan might end up shooting herself in the foot, midway through the banquet. I excused myself to sober up. Avoiding the crowded areas, I made my way to a waterside pavilion. A man in black stood with his hands clasped behind his back in the waterside pavilion. I stepped forward and bowed to him. "Greetings, Commander." Ji Yu-tsung turned slowly, exuding a hint of chill. His gaze was as sharp as a blade, falling directly upon me. "Did Madame Wei summon me regarding the incident of bandits attacking your esteemed family's elderly madam, if you wish to inquire?" You should ask Marquis Wei instead. I just apprehended the culprits when the Ministry of Justice took them away. The displeasure in his words was completely unconcealed. I lifted my gaze to meet his eyes and said, "You misunderstand, my lord. I've come regarding His Highness the Crown Prince's illness." Ji Tsong's expression darkened abruptly, an icy aura instantly radiating from his entire being. Everyone knew this cold-faced, ruthless commander held another identity. That was the deceased empress's younger brother, the Crown Prince's maternal uncle. Over these years, Ji Tsong had been traveling far and wide for the Crown Prince's illness, showing how much he cared for this nephew. In my past life, my adopted son Wei Yun once fell seriously ill. I sought out the divine physician Ming Xuanzi to treat him and even opened the Zhao family treasury wide for the physician to find medicines. Ming Xuanzi felt deeply moved when he saw the snowlingji mushroom placed on the counter. He reflected that if they had known the Zhao family could obtain snowlingji back then, Commander Ji Yu wouldn't have fallen off a cliff while searching for the medicine, nor would His Highness the Crown Prince, that radiant and noble figure, have succumbed to illness prematurely due to his uncle's death. Indeed, in their past lives, both Ji Tsong and the Crown Prince had been fated to die young. Hearing me mention the snowlingji, Ji Tsong's pupils contracted slightly before me. He studied me for a long while before finally speaking. "Speak then, what does the Ningyuan Marquisate want?" I gave a slight curtsy. "The Zhao family offers medicine. This has nothing to do with the Marquis's household. What I seek is solely for myself." Ji Tsong repeated the words Zhao family, a faint smile curling at the corners of his lips. How intriguing. He paused, his gaze drifting back once more. "If the snowlingji truly proves effective, His Highness the Crown Prince will remember the Zhao family's contribution." Seeing him agree, I breathed a sigh of relief. Just as Ji Tsong was about to turn away, I called out to him again, "One more thing, while attending to His Highness. My lord might also investigate the corruption case in Yuzhou." Ji Tsong paused mid-step, turning back to give me a profound look. Those sharp eyes seemed filled with inquiry, yet he asked nothing more. With a slight nod, he strode away briskly. I remained seated in the waterside pavilion a while longer. Ji Tsong truly lived up to his nickname Living Yama. Conversing with him was quite intimidating. Wherever his gaze swept past, I couldn't help but shiver. Even after he left, his lingering aura remained. It took me quite a while to recover, only to see someone hurrying over. She was Wei Minglan's personal maid. Her face was deathly pale, her voice trembling. "Madam, something terrible has happened. The young mistress, she's in trouble. I won't marry. I refuse to marry Qi Sheng." As I approached Wei Minglan's courtyard, screams could be heard from within. Ever since she was caught frolicking with Qi Sheng, heir to the Zhaoda Marquis, during the last birthday banquet, Wei Minglan had become the laughingstock of the capital. These past few days, she had been wailing incessantly in her residence, smashing her rooms into complete disarray. "You refuse to marry. If you won't marry, then take a white silk cord and end yourself. You schemed against others only to trap yourself. How could I have such a foolish sister?" Wei Mingyang was also furious. His voice carried not sympathy for his sister's plight, but accusation. Originally, he had planned to use Wei Minglan's marriage alliance to strengthen ties with the fourth prince. The promised 100,000 taels weren't delivered last time, making the fourth prince already harbor dissatisfaction toward him. After Wei Minglan's incident, the fourth prince refused to see him anymore, all because Qi Sheng was Consort des' nephew. Consort des' son, the sixth prince, was now subtly challenging the fourth prince's authority in court. Wei Minglan sleeping with Qi Sheng aroused suspicion in the fourth prince's heart towards her. Wei Mingyang felt nothing but burning fury in his chest. Hearing Wei Minglan's cries only stoked his anger further. The sound of slaps coming from inside the room struck me as bitterly ironic. The Wei family was rotten to the core. These siblings were each more selfish and heartless than the other. I waved my hand, signaling the maid behind me to bring in the betrothal letter sent by the Marquis of Zhaoda's household. Sure enough, another round of crashing and smashing erupted from inside shortly after. I curled my lips faintly. In her previous life, the young lady who was schemed against by Wei Minglan died of illness shortly after marrying Qi Sheng. Qi Sheng had always been notorious for his penchant for abusing women, with many beautiful young ladies ruined by his hands. This time, I gave the young lady a heads up beforehand, and the outcome didn't disappoint me. Had Wei Minglan not been so vicious, she wouldn't have ended up dragging herself down. Back when I married Wei Mingyang, Wei Minglan had always shown dissatisfaction toward me as her sister-in-law. She repeatedly mentioned in front of me that her brother deserved nothing less than a noblewoman. marrying a merchant's daughter like me was nothing short of my Zhao family climbing above our station. Every time she mocked me like this, Wei Mingyang would always step forward to scold her. He claimed it was his initiative to seek my hand in marriage, so Wei Minglan shouldn't disrespect me as her sister-in-law. I was always moved by Wei Mingyan's defense of me, which made me devote myself more selflessly to him and the Marquis household. Only after living a second life did I realize Wei Mingyang acted this way solely to make me more blindly devoted to him. If he truly intended to discipline Wei Minglan, I wouldn't have had to endure her humiliations time and again. For him, it was merely a matter of scolding me with a few words. Wei Minglan was also happy to play along with her brother, treating me worse with each passing day. This time, she would taste the bitter fruit of her own making. No matter how unwilling Wei Minglan was, she ultimately boarded the bridal sedan. After all, a woman with a ruined reputation wouldn't even be allowed into the fourth prince's residence as a concubine. Wei Mingyang possessed little conscience when it came to considering his sister's welfare. His mind was wholly preoccupied with the fact that the Qi family was a force he couldn't afford to offend. In fact, his resolve had already begun to waver. If boarding the fourth prince's ship proves impossible, then switching allegiance to the sixth prince would also be a fine alternative. Thus, on the day Wei Minglan returned to her maiden home, Wei Mingyan's attitude towards Qi Sheng could only be described as attentive and thorough. Even when his sister served tea, revealing the blue-purple bruises beneath her slipping wide sleeves, he pretended not to see, as he escorted them out of the residence. Qi Sheng patted Wei Mingyan's shoulder with a tone dripping with arrogance and frivolity. Wei Mingyang ignored Wei Minglan's pleading gaze directed at him, busily currying favor with Qi Sheng instead. Standing nearby, I caught a glimpse of a fleeting figure darting through the alley not far away from the corner of my eye. It was someone from the fourth prince's faction. The corners of my lips curled slightly upward, in fourth prince's eyes. Wei Mingyang had now completely pledged allegiance to sixth prince. As for whom to vent his anger on next, fourth prince should already have a clear target in mind. The next day at court, the Yu province embezzlement case was suddenly brought up again. Though the principal culprit wasn't directly appointed by fourth prince, they were deeply connected to his faction. In his imperial wrath, all those involved were punished, dealing a devastating blow to the fourth prince's faction. The one who exposed this affair was none other than Qi Sheng's father, Marquis Zhaoda. Wei Mingyang returned to his residence with an ashen face. Collapsing into a chair, clutching his hair, he muttered, "It's over. The fourth prince must think I conspired with Marquis Zhaoda to inform on him." But I didn't say anything. He did entertain the idea of hedging his bets, but deep down he still favored the fourth prince's claim to the throne. Besides, he hadn't yet established a real connection with the sixth prince's faction, so he hadn't dared to casually hand over the information he had on the fourth prince. That ransom of 100,000 taels was originally meant to fill the embezzlement gap and serve as his pledge of loyalty to the fourth prince. Now the hole hasn't been filled, but instead became sixth prince's blade pointed at fourth prince. When court adjourned, fourth prince's gaze at him was icy cold. As if looking at a dead man, Wei Mingyang grew more fearful the longer he thought, cold sweat streaming down his forehead. He knew full well fourth prince had always been one to return every slight tenfold. He would never spare someone who defected to his sworn enemy and ruined his grand plans. The fourth prince's wrath soon turned into action. Fearing retaliation, Wei Mingyang had been keeping indoors these past few days, but Meng Wn from Sweetwater Lane kept sending messengers to urge him. And eventually he couldn't resist, choosing to slip out quietly one late night. This departure led him straight into the trap carefully laid by the fourth prince. When Wei Mingyang was carried back to the Marquis's residence, his entire body was covered in blood, his face swollen and bruised beyond recognition, with his legs twisted at unnatural angles. After examining him, the physician shook his head and said his legs would likely remain permanently disabled. Even more devastating was the severe injury to his lower body, rendering him incapable of fathering children in the future. The fourth prince was ruthless indeed. He knew that severing a man's lineage would condemn him to a living hell for the rest of his days. But he didn't know that Wei Mingyang had long been secretly supporting Meng Wan and their two children outside. No matter, I would personally drag them into the light, soon. The Wei clan relatives caught wind of the news and gathered around Wei Mingyan's bed, sighing mournfully. My eyes reddened, my voice trembling. The Marquis is in such a state now. The physician says heirs will be difficult, with only me in the household, and my womb proving uncooperative. The Marquisate title, surely it cannot end like this. These words struck at the elder's sore spot. The Ningyuan Marquisate was their reliance, the noble title must never be allowed to decline. Someone immediately proposed, why not select a child from the clan to be adopted by the Marquis? The clan leader slapped his thigh. Exactly what should be done. I pretended to comply. I'll follow whatever arrangements the clan leader makes. Wei Mingyang woke up to the news that he had been declared useless and that the clan was planning to adopt a son for him. In a fit of rage, he smashed his medicine bowl and roared, "The title my father earned, why should it go to an outsider?" I stood by, wiping my tears. "It's all my fault. If only I could have given you a child, they wouldn't have this hold over us. I tried to persuade you to take a concubine back then, but you wouldn't listen. Even without me, it would be good if a concubine or maidservant could bear my husband a child." Wei Mingyan's face turned from red to pale, gradually calming down. I knew he was weighing his options, whether to bring Meng Wan and those siblings into the household. As long as we bring that brother and sister back to acknowledge their ancestors and return to the family, the title of Marquis of Ningyuan won't fall into the hands of those distant relatives. He closed his eyes in deep thought, so I withdrew to have the maid brew another dose of medicine. Just as I reached the corner, I heard him summoning his trusted servant from inside the room. A cold smile curled at the corners of my lips. The fish has taken the bait. The clan leader was extremely earnest about the adoption matter. Within just 3 days, the clan had settled on the candidate for adoption. It was none other than the clan leader's own chubby little grandson, who had just turned 4. On the day the ancestral hall was opened, all the clan elders gathered together. The clan leader led his grandson before Wei Mingyang and me, pushing the child forward with a face full of creased smiles. "Good child. Call them father and mother, from today onward. You are the young master of Ningyuan Marquis Manor, destined to inherit the noble title." The boy lifted his head, about to speak, when Wei Mingyang coldly waved his hand. "What's the hurry, clan leader? The succession of Marquis Ningyuan's title isn't something outsiders can just snatch away." The clan leader's smile froze on his face. He snorted heavily. "If you hadn't been rendered useless, leaving not even an heir behind, would I need to go through all this trouble? I'm only thinking of the Wei family's glory. Who says I'm childless?" Wei Mingyang could no longer contain himself when the clan leader directly touched his sore spot. With a wave of his hand, his trusted subordinate immediately brought in 2 children. Wei Mingyang pointed at the brother and sister pair. "These are my own flesh and blood." I raised an eyebrow. Wei Mingyang only brought back this pair of siblings. Seems he's still afraid of exposing Meng Wan to the world. But it doesn't matter, someone will always make their move. I lowered my gaze, and when I looked up again, my face was filled with disbelief. "My lord, what exactly is going on here?" Wei Mingyan's face twisted into a feigned expression of remorse as he spoke in a low voice. "Alan, I've wronged you. 5 years ago, in a drunken stupor, I became entangled with another woman. She bore me these twins before passing away. I feared you might hold resentment, so I dared not bring them back to the Marquis's estate. But now that I've fallen into such dire straits, I have no choice but to let them claim their rightful place in the family." He paused, then reassured, "Don't worry, once the children enter the manor, they'll surely treat you with the filial piety reserved for their own mother." His feigned affectionate expression made my stomach churn. I turned my face away, putting on a pained expression without responding. The clan leader's expression was even uglier than mine. He had gone to great lengths to have his grandson adopted into the Marquis's household. Now that Wei Mingyang suddenly produced 2 biological children out of thin air, how could he possibly accept this? His face darkened as he stared at the 2 children, suspicion never leaving his expression. "Marquis, the lineage of this marquisate isn't something you can decide with just a word. These 2 children might well be imposters you've brought here to deceive us." His gaze swept over the assembled clan members as he raised his voice. "Since all the elders of our clan are present today, why not conduct a blood test? This way, everyone can be convinced." Wei Mingyang agreed. Servants quickly brought forth clear water and silver needles. Under the watchful eyes of the assembly, Wei Mingyang's blood merged seamlessly with the young boys. Wei Mingyang breathed a sigh of relief and looked triumphantly at the clan leader. "Now that it's been proven Yuna is my own flesh and blood, today is the perfect day to enter both children's names into the clan registry. Once my health improves somewhat, I'll petition to have Yuna officially recognized as heir." The unspoken implication was to warn the clan leader and others against coveting the Marquisate's title any longer. But just at that moment, a voice rang out, "Appoint an heir." "Wei Mingyang, whether your Ningyuan Marquisate can even keep its title is still uncertain." Everyone turned toward the sound to see the 4th prince strolling in unhurriedly. He walked up to Wei Mingyang and looked down imperiously at him, who, due to his immobility, could only sit slumped in his chair. A cold smile curled at the corners of his lips. I heard today that the Marquis of Wei's household was holding a ceremony in the ancestral hall to adopt an heir. I came to join the excitement, but never expected to see a suspicious woman lurking outside. My attendant happened to be sharp-eyed and recognized her instantly as the daughter of the traitor Meng Yu from 7 years ago. Meng Yu committed treason back then, and his entire family was executed. So why is his daughter peering around outside your Marquis's residence? Marquis Wei, may I ask what your relationship with her is? Wei Mingyan's face turned deathly pale, while the fourth prince curled his lips in satisfaction. With a clap of his hands, 2 guards escorted a woman forward. The woman was none other than Meng Wn. Her hair was disheveled, a far cry from the triumphant appearance she had shown me in our previous life. The guard tightened his grip, causing Meng Wn to cry out in pain. Hearing this, the siblings immediately rushed to Meng Wan's side, clawing and kicking at the guard. Let go of our mother, let her go right now. At these words, the fourth prince laughed even more heartily. Pointing at the siblings, he said to Wei Mingyang, Marquis Wei, these siblings share your bloodline, yet they call this convicted traitor's daughter their mother. Tell me, after I report this to His Majesty, should you be charged with deceiving the throne by harboring imperial fugitives or as an accomplice to treason? Wei Mingyan's body went limp, nearly sliding off his chair, before he could speak. The clan leader who had already assessed the situation rushed to distance himself. Fourth prince, harboring criminals was solely Ning Yuan whose doing. Our entire clan knew absolutely nothing about this. At this moment, he felt immensely grateful that his grandson hadn't been successfully registered under Wei Mingyan's name. Not only that, he hastily picked up his brush and wrote in the clan registry, by the authority vested in me as the head of the Wei clan, I hereby decree that the lineage of the Marquis of Ning Yuan shall henceforth be expelled from our clan. From this day forward, whether the Marquis's household prospers or declines, it shall have no connection whatsoever with the Wei clan. After striking Wei Mingyan's name from the clan registry, the clan leader and his entourage immediately took their leave. They feared that any delay might result in the fourth prince charging them with guilt by association. Guards. The fourth prince shouted loudly, take all these people away and interrogate them thoroughly to uncover what disgraceful schemes this Marquis of Ning Yuan has been hiding. The entire household of the Marquis of Ning Yuan was taken to prison. Even Lady Yu, who had become a living corpse, was carried in and discarded in a corner, ignored by all. In the dark, damp prison cell, Meng Wn clung to her 2 children, weeping pitifully beside Wei Mingyang. Wei Mingyan's temples throbbed from being pestered. His gaze swept over me sitting quietly in the corner before he abruptly pushed Meng Wn away and limped toward me. Alan, I've dragged you into this. His voice trembled as he tried to take my hand. I sidestepped his touch, my eyes frosty. It was indeed your fault. So, are you willing to write a divorce letter stating I knew nothing about your affairs? Wei Mingyan's face instantly turned pale, then he forced a pleading expression. Alan, there's no need for divorce, there's still hope. Have your mother used the Zhao family's wealth to send sufficient bribes to the fourth prince, he'll surely spare us. Us, I scoffed with a sneer, glancing at Meng Wn and her son. Which us are you referring to? Naturally, you and me, Wei Mingyang immediately responded, turning to glare fiercely at Meng Wn. If she hadn't seduced me, how could I have ended up in this mess? Once we're out of here, I'll treat only you well. Upon hearing this, Meng Wn lunged forward, her nails clawing at his face. You have no conscience. Wei Mingyang, it was you who saved me and hid me back then, and now you're pinning it all on me. Yuna and Yao Yao are your children too. How could you abandon them? The 2 children clung to Wei Mingyan's legs, crying and pleading, Daddy, please don't abandon us. Wei Mingyang violently kicked them away, roaring hoarsely, it was you who plotted against me. You, the daughter of a disgraced official, should have died long ago. These 2 bastards carry your blood, they're unworthy to be called my children. I watched this ugly farce unfold, feeling nothing but irony. In my past life, the Wami family, who had flaunted their power before me, shattered into pieces the moment they fell into misfortune. Wei Mingyang saw that I remained unmoved, so he changed his tune and began rambling on about our past affection. He even rolled up his sleeves, revealing the scars on his arm. Alan, have you forgotten that time at Lingquan Temple? I rushed into the sea of flames to save you and got my arm crushed by a falling beam. Yes, that was the time. The meditation room at Lingquan Temple caught fire, trapping me inside. In that critical moment, Wei Mingyang rushed into the flames and saved me. It was seeing him risk his life to protect me that day that made me entrust my whole heart to him, yet now he uses this scar as leverage, reminding me of the life I owe him. I've heard about Marquis Wei's heroic rescue of the beauty. A chilling voice suddenly rang out as Ji Yu-tsung emerged from the shadows. Unfortunately, your trusted servant just confessed many of your secrets, including how you ordered him to set fire outside the meditation room at Lingquan Temple years ago. Wei Mingyan's face turned deathly pale as he urgently explained to me, Alan, don't believe him, he's slandering me, how could I ever harm you? He raised his eyes to meet mine, only to collide with the icy depths of my gaze. How could you ever harm me? You mean how you bribed mountain bandits to kidnap my mother, poisoned my daily meals with sterility drugs, kept Meng Wn hidden away, planning to eventually place your children under my name so I could pave the way for your offspring while you slowly devoured my Zhao family's fortune. Are you telling me none of these schemes and calculations count as harming me? Wei Mingyang staggered back under my relentless questioning, his lips trembling speechlessly, his pupils were filled with shock. These underhanded schemes were things he'd only discussed privately with Meng Wn. How could I possibly know every detail? How could you? His Adam's apple bobbed as his eyes suddenly widened. That time when my mother was abducted by mountain bandits, it was you who deliberately, it was me. I let out a cold laugh, each word sharp as a blade. Not just your mother, but also Wei Minglan's marriage, and the day Meng Wn was caught by the fourth prince during the family reunion. All of it was my doing. Wei Mingyang, I swore to make your Ningyuan marquisate pay in blood. The words felt like a bucket of ice water, drenching him and sending shivers through his body, but he quickly snapped out of it, a flash of ruthlessness flickering in his eyes. So what if you destroyed the marquis's estate? You're stuck in this prison with me now. If I don't write the divorce papers, you'll never shake off the crimes of Ningyuan marquis's estate. You'll have to die with me. You needn't trouble yourself with this matter, Marquis Wei. I raised my gaze to meet Ji Yu-tsung's. Understanding my intent, he stepped forward and unfurled the bright yellow imperial scroll in his hands. Ji Yu-tsung's voice rang out clearly, by decree of the emperor. Ordained by heaven, Zhao Tinglan of the Zhao family is hereby recognized for presenting the snow spirit herb and recommending a divine physician to His Highness the Crown Prince, rendering meritorious service in the Crown Prince's recovery. After investigation, it was found that Ningyuan Marquis Wei Mingyang was not involved in harboring imperial fugitives. By special decree, he is hereby granted divorce. All dowry and servants brought by Lady Zhao upon her marriage into the Marquis household shall be returned for her own disposal, so decrees His Majesty. As the imperial edict was proclaimed, Wei Mingyang collapsed to the ground, his eyes wide as copper bells, muttering impossible. I stepped forward, looking down at him coldly, my voice soft yet icy. Wei Mingyang, whether it's imprisonment or beheading, I'll no longer be keeping you company. With that, I smoothed my skirt and gracefully stepped out of the prison door. I had only taken a few steps when Wei Mingyan's heart-wrenching wails came from behind me. Alan, I was wrong. Save me. I'll serve you like a slave. My steps remained light and carefree as I paid him no further heed. Never again would I waste my spirit on such worthless scum. Stepping out of the prison, the glaring sunlight made me squint. Mother stood beneath the shade of a tree not far away. Craning her neck toward the prison gate, wisps of hair at her temples tousled by the wind. Lana, seeing me emerge, she immediately quickened her steps to meet me. Her hands moved from my cheeks to my arms, repeatedly checking that I wasn't injured before finally letting out a long sigh of relief. Though her eyes reddened with emotion, "It's all right now, it's all right." She turned to look at Ji Yu-tsung and bowed deeply with solemnity. My deepest gratitude to Commander Ji Yu for rescuing my Lana from imprisonment. Ji Yu-tsung stepped forward to offer a symbolic gesture of support, speaking earnestly, "You needn't stand on ceremony, Madame Zhao." The snowlingji presented by Miss Zhao, along with the renowned physician Ming Xuanzi she found for the Crown Prince, were not just life-saving favors for His Highness, they were a rebirth bestowed upon me. He paused briefly before adding, "Moreover, regarding the Yuzhou embezzlement case. Had Miss Zhao not tipped me off beforehand, I wouldn't have uncovered the fourth prince's schemes so smoothly. It was she who advised me to deliver the evidence into the sixth prince's faction's hands, provoking conflict between them and ensuring His Highness's treatment proceeded undisturbed." Ji Yu-tsung's gaze settled upon me. "Now that His Highness the Crown Prince has nearly recovered, it's time to thoroughly cleanse this court." I stepped forward and curtsied. Though the Zhao family may not be among the most prestigious clans, we still possess modest assets and connections. if His Highness would not disdain our humble offer, the Zhao family is willing to dedicate all our resources to support your Highness." Ji Yutsong smiled upon hearing this, his eyes revealing approval. Miss Zhao's discernment is leagues better than Marquis Ningyuan's. He stepped aside to clear the path. "The carriage is ready. I'll escort you and your mother back to the residence. As for the Crown Prince, I'll convey your sentiments on your behalf." The illicit affair between Wei Mingyang and Meng Wn became the sharpest blade in the fourth prince's hands. In his previous life, after ascending the throne, he remembered Wei Mingyan's loyalty in supporting his rise and even granted the Meng family rehabilitation. In this life, convinced that Wei Mingyang had defected to the sixth prince, he spared no effort to pin the charge of treason on him. He sought to use Wei Mingyang to implicate the sixth prince's faction and eradicate them root and branch. The tortures in the prison grew harsher by the day. Wei Mingyang suffered multiple broken bones and finally, unable to endure any longer, bribed a jailer to secretly deliver a letter begging for an audience with the sixth prince. He handed over the incriminating evidence against the fourth prince that he had been hiding in his hand. All were backup plans kept for self-preservation, hoping the sixth prince would rescue him. But he never expected that after the sixth prince used the evidence to bring down the fourth prince, he would immediately cast him aside. Even crueler was Qi Sheng, who after divorcing Wei Minglan, personally sent her to prison, locking her up together with Wei Mingyang. This sixth prince faction understands better than Wei Mingyang what it truly means to kick down the ladder after crossing the bridge, with the fourth prince fallen. Wei Mingyang and Meng Wan's execution by decapitation was swiftly decided. Wei Minglan and those two children were sentenced to be consigned to the slave camps, enslaved for eternity. As for his mother Lady Yu, who had become a living corpse, she died silently in prison on the fifth day of incarceration, without even a thin coffin to her name. The sixth prince thought that with the fourth prince gone, he could monopolize power. But he never expected Consort Da's past crime of poisoning the crown prince would be uncovered by Ji Yutsong. The late empress and the emperor were childhood sweethearts, sharing a deep bond. The current emperor cherished his legitimate son, the crown prince, to the very core of his being. Upon learning that his beloved son had been bedridden for years due to secret poisoning, the emperor flew into a rage and immediately ordered poisoned wine for Consort Da. The imperial consort was ordered to commit suicide, while the crown prince recovered from his illness. Seeing no hope for the throne, the sixth prince secretly mobilized his private troops and launched a rebellion to storm the palace. When he charged into the palace with his sword drawn, he realized he had long fallen into a trap. Before the imperial carriage, Ji Yutsong had already laid an inescapable net with the men from the Imperial Guard, who leaked the secret. The captured sixth prince struggled and roared, his gaze sweeping over his ashen-faced confidants beside him, unaware that this was never the work of a traitor among them. "It was I who informed the crown prince's faction about his secret cultivation of private troops. In my past life, after the crown prince's demise, the fourth prince and sixth prince engaged in endless strife. Although it was ultimately suppressed by the fourth prince, the imperial palace became a slaughterhouse that day, littered with corpses. In this life, with my warning, the crown prince and Ji Yutsong had long laid their trap. Not only did they prevent him from harming his majesty, but they also suffered minimal casualties among the palace staff." The emperor on the dragon throne trembled with rage and immediately issued an edict sentencing him to death. The sixth prince stared wide-eyed until the poisoned wine reached his throat, never understanding where he had lost. The news of his execution reached the Zhao residence just as the imperial rewards arrived. Silks, satins, and rare treasures piled up halfway across the courtyard. On the final unfurled imperial decree in bright yellow, the emperor personally bestowed upon me the title Princess Anlan. Ji Yutsong, the official delivering the edict, rolled up the scroll and asked me with a smile, "Now that your highness has achieved her heart's desire, what plans do you have for the future?" I gazed at the spring scenery beyond the courtyard and whispered softly, "I want to take mother to enjoy the mountains and waters of Jiangnan. When shall we depart?" He raised an eyebrow. "We'll leave first thing tomorrow morning." Ji Yutsong raised his hand in salute, his eyes holding a profound meaning. "In that case, I wish the young mistress a smooth journey. Until we meet again." I returned the gesture with a smile. The wind swept up the crabapple petals in the courtyard, carrying them into the distance. From now on, I shall seek another new world. The end.